Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I hope everybody is ready for a bright, shiny day. I am very excited because we have a dynamic brother and sister duo, Carter and Olivia LeDuc, ready to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And then the always extraordinary Mrs. Tiffany Penick, our Kids Korner coordinator, will be reading us chapters 13 through 15 in Song for a Whale. I hope everybody is ready for a great day. Go out there. Your future is looking bright.
Good morning, Weaver Whales. My name is Carter. I'm in 5th grade, and I'm in Mr. Ball's class this year.
My name's Olivia. I'm in 2nd grade. I'm in Miss Samanta's class this year.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Take off all hats and hoods.
And place your right hand over your heart.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a good day, Weaver Whales.
Bye!
Hi, Weaver Whales. It's Miss Tiffany, Supervisor of Weaver Kids Korner. So happy that today I can read to all of you. I'm very excited to read chapters 13, 14, and 15 today. So let's get started. Wendell's house was just a short bike ride from Mr. Gunner's shop. Before leaving home, I'd stuff my notes about frequencies and piano keys into the front pocket of my jeans. Wendell's 9-year-old sister, Eleanor, was practicing tennis in the driveway as usual. A bundle of black braids flying behind her as she served a ball to the garage door and chased after it for the return. One got past her, and I grabbed it as it rolled towards the street. Looking good, I signed, after tossing it back to her. Eleanor's goal was to be better tennis player than Venus and Serena Williams. Not just because they'd be old by the time she could play them. She wanted to be good enough to beat them anytime. She set the ball and racket down to free up her hands. Thanks. Getting ready for a match this weekend. Eleanor signed like a deaf person, even though she was hearing. Wendell was the only one in their family who had ever been deaf. As far as anyone knew, their parents started learning sign language right after Wendell was born, and they signed all the time at home. His mom was even a teacher of the deaf at Bridgewood Junior High, where Wendell would go next year. You'll do great, Wendell. She pointed into the house while taking a gulp from her water bottle. Summer had hit Houston, and Eleanor's brown face was shining with sweat. He's changing the stars, she signed after getting her bottle back down. Through the glass panel on the front door, I saw the flicker of the strobe light. When I pressed the doorbell, followed by the tall figure of Wendell's mom, we had a flashing doorbell at home too, so I'd know when someone was at the door. I'd wired mine so that the lamps in the living room and my bedroom blinked on and off when someone rang the doorbell. Miss Jackson answered the door and smiled. Great to see you, she signed. Wendell's upstairs. I thanked her and ran up to Wendell's room, where he stood on a wooden ladder, pulling sticky plastic stars from the ceiling. His t-shirt read, "You are here," with an arrow pointing to a spot in the Milky Way. I didn't have to ask what he was doing. He was always rearranging the stars to make the current night sky. He gave me a one-handed, "What's up?" with the hand that wasn't holding a star chart. Can I play the piano? I asked. Probably not very well. I put a hand on my hip and I signed, I'm serious, even though I was trying not to laugh. I mean, I want to check something out on the piano. He climbed down from the ladder and led me into his family's library, which was also their piano room. We sat on the bench together and he asked, So what's the thing you have to check out? I handed him the slip of paper from my pocket. It's about this whale. What kind of whale? Not a kind of whale, just one specific whale. I learned about him in science. I placed a hand on top of the piano, and Wendell did the same. At the top of the page, I'd written regular whales 28HZ, first piano key, 35HZ, fifth piano key. With one finger, I struck the key on the far left. The low sound vibrated against my palm. I played it a few times so we could get to know the sound. Then I did the same thing with each key up to the fifth black one. A black one that played 35 hertz. Blue and fin whales didn't sing much higher than that. On the next line of the page, I had written 55HZ, 13th piano key. I counted over, starting from the first key, until I landed on number 13. A white key this time. I played the note a few times, and the vibration tickled my palm again, a bit lighter than the others. So, this whale, I explained to Wendell, that's what he sounds like. I hit the key again, but here's what he's supposed to sound like. I struck the first key again, so he can't talk to other whales. Wendell placed both hands on top of the piano. As I altered between the two notes, not much of a difference, he signed. It's a big difference for whales. He was right. It didn't feel like much of a difference, less than a foot apart of the keyboard, but it separated Blue 55 from all the other whales. I thought back to my visit with Grandma and how we sat right next to each other on the couch and couldn't think of what to say. The befuddled face on Wendell's father peeked into the room. He looked like a taller version of Wendell, but with a bald, brown head instead of a buzz cut. Wendell raised his arms so his dad could see his signs over the top of the piano. It's our new act. We're going on the road with this dueling pianist. It'll be great, Mr. Jackson laughed and added, as long as your audience is deaf too. Wendell rolled his eyes like he was annoyed, but then laughed too. His dad was used to signing all the time, and he could jump in on any conversation with us. Wendell told me before that he'd gladly trade for a dad who didn't say anything unless he had to. But I knew he didn't mean it. So he can't sing lower or something? Wendell asked after his dad left. No, he's been swimming around by himself for a long time. So I think if he could talk to other whales, he would. Or he's a loner and doesn't want to? Wendell nudged my shoulder. I didn't ask him why. I don't know, maybe. I think he just can't. And the other whales can't hear him. If they can, they don't know what he's saying. I played each note again, focusing on the difference, and wished I could lower the piano into the ocean and play that note for Blue 55. I want to find a way to talk to him. To the whale? Yes, the whale. How? That's what I have to figure out. Then what? I don't know that either, not yet. We took turns playing the keys while each of us rested a hand on the piano. Why do you want to talk to him? Wendell asked. I didn't know how to answer him, how to explain that this whale swam in an ocean surrounded by other whales he couldn't talk to, that there was no pod or a single whale who understood him, not even his own parents, and that I wanted to create a song that would let him know he wasn't alone. I couldn't fully explain it to myself either. I tried to come up with something to compare it to, and I couldn't explain it. Wendell would understand better, like the gravity of a black hole drawing in everything around it. He keeps singing this song, and everything in the ocean swims by him, as if he's not there. He thinks no one understands him. I want to let him know he's wrong about that. A pod of humpback whales swam past. He hadn't met them before. He wasn't sure of that. He would remember. A whale remembers everything, even the things he tries hard not to forget. Maybe he could join them. He approached from the side, swimming at the edge of the migrating family. For a time, he would hang back, gliding slightly alongside them. Later, if they didn't object, he would drift closer. He had tried this before, each time, hoping he would be allowed to stay, even if they couldn't understand his music. The pods who had recently lost a member were the easiest to join. He knew them by their songs made of low, mournful tones, announcing their grief to the ocean. They swam with an empty space, carrying the shadow of a whale who used to be there. Whether they craved a new whale to fill the emptiness or didn't have the strength to slap a tail to tell him to leave, he didn't know. He created music the same way they did, forcing breath into spaces in his body, circulating the air until breath and space turned into song. Still, the sound wasn't right. The tones didn't match the ones around him. They had heard. He knew by the way they glanced back. With time, maybe they would understand just one sound, the smallest ripple of his song, and that would be enough. I dreamed that Blue 55 sang to me. When I woke up, my hand still rested on the top of the Philco. Maybe the radio station had been playing a song with notes that hit 55 hertz. I wanted to feel them again, but the vibrations from the radio had changed the choppy rhythm of talking, and the whale song from my dream had slipped away. After that, I couldn't fall back to sleep. I kept thinking about Blue 55's song and wanted to feel it again. I searched on my phone, took me to an article called Making Music with Whales, which had pictures of weird sheet music. I had to sit through enough music classes in elementary school to know what it should look like. Instead of black dots or circles for each note, these pictures showed music scales with colored lines and shapes over them. At first, it looked like someone had splattered paint, making a colorful chain of islands across the page. As I looked more carefully, the shapes became more defined. One shape looked like a wobbly heart, another like a bird. Sheet music for whale songs. Maybe I'd found a way to understand the whale's music without hearing it. The colored splotches and lines represented the parts of the songs. Plain black dots weren't enough to show what a whale song sounded like. They sang more complicated songs than humans could compose. The colorful splotches covered more of the music scale than human music, with different notes following together in each part of the song. The humpback song were the most complex, with lots of colors and shapes dancing up and down the music scale. The songs of most whales stayed near the same lines of the scale. Instead of zigzagging from low to high, they didn't even have many colors. It was like most whales were playing one instrument, and the humpbacks played a whole symphony. Their sheet music showed a song with an orange, pink, purple, red, and blue pattern, over and over. But the whales stretched them out as they went on, before starting the song over again with short bursts of sound. The article even had sheet music for Blue 55. Some of the colors were the same as the other whales, but they were higher on the musical scale and in a different pattern. His song was in a blue, purple, and red pattern, adding a part at the end of each section that looked like wavy lines on the sheet music. Sometimes those waves were blue, sometimes red or purple, but he'd always sing the wavy line part of the song before starting the pattern over again. Same shape, different colors, like Grandpa's poems. The same hand shapes, but different signs. Blue 55's own rhythm. The notes on the page swirled together with the plan. I started thinking of before I went to Wendell's to play the piano. I found a chart online that listed musical instruments and the frequencies they played. Not many instruments could get as low as 55 hertz. Even though it was a high sound for a whale, it was a low sound for humans. The tuba could play it, and the bass trombone, and a harpsichord, whatever that was. I printed out the chart along with the sheet music. I tacked Blue's 55 song next to his picture on the wall. The song wasn't like any other, and no other whale understood it, but it was his. Maybe it didn't look like much on paper, but there was another way it was like Grandpa's poems. The whale needed space above and below and all around him to sing his song. When I was in 3rd grade, I had to go to music class with my homeroom. We followed a rotation for PE, library, music, and art. I had to be dragged out of the library when it was time to leave. In art, I could paint or draw what I couldn't say. PE was something to put up with, but in music, I would daydream while the class learned about musical notes or whatever. Or I'd have to sign the songs along with Mr. Charles. The day the teacher handed out recorders for us to play, I asked Mom to get me out of the class. Playing music was worthless. From then on, I had extra library time when the rest of the class went to music. Then there I was at the end of my 6th grade, standing in front of a door that read, music room. That morning, I'd stopped by to ask the music teacher, Mr. Russell, if I could talk to him about a project. He said he'd have some time after school. Before opening the door, I reached up and touched the whale compass, which I had been wearing as a necklace. The day I brought it home from Mr. Gunner's shop, I tugged through my jewelry box for a gold chain. Everything was either too short or the wrong color, except the one around my neck, holding the radio knob. I unhooked the chain and threaded it through the loop at the top of the compass, and I hooked the clasp around my neck. I wondered if that ship captain who owned it ever found his way home. A message on Mr. Russell's whiteboard read, "Back after bus duty." While I waited, I browsed the posters of instruments on the wall. I pulled my notes about musical instruments and frequencies from my pocket, then touched the holes on the picture of the brass saxophone on the brass poster. Someone who knew which holes to cover or uncover while blowing into the instrument would be able to play a note that Blue 55 would hear. Mr. Russell waved his hand near me to let me know he was back, then said, "How can I help you?" Normally, his slow, exaggerated talking would annoy me, but my excitement about the plan pushed that aside. I handed Mr. Russell my notes, along with the sheet music for Blue 55's song. At the bottom of the page, I had written, "I want to record a song for this whale." He sat at his desk to look over everything, then flipped back to the beginning and read it again. I didn't notice until he glanced at my hand that my fingers were drumming his desk. When he started to talk, I handed him a marker and pointed to the whiteboard. "Fascinating," he wrote. "I can put something together for you with some of the band and orchestra students. It won't sound so good to humans, but it could be a big hit for the whales." With a red marker, I wrote, "Thanks," when I come back to record it. A few students were coming into the music room with their instrument cases. "Tomorrow after school," he wrote. "I won't take long since it's only a couple notes, just oddly played." Perfect. Once I got a sound file on the recording, I had the biggest part of what I needed. The plan to reach out to Blue 55 was coming together. I smiled and wrote thank you on the board before leaving. Mr. Russell hadn't asked what class my project was for, or even if it was for a class at all. That was okay. This was more important than any class. Dear Andy, thanks for answering my questions so fast. Can you send me a recording of the sanctuary animals for a project I'm working on? If you could send me a sound file or whatever you recorded, that would really help. Thanks, Iris Bailey. And that's the end of my chapters today. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. I'm very proud to be a Weaver whale.